Good morning, students. I hope you are doing well. I hope you are learning this semester in the Principles of Management course. As an aspiring manager, obviously working professional and independent learner, in my opinion, everything that you're learning this semester is applicable to your lives. And some things are going to be more readily applicable, or shall I say, readily used in your daily lives. And we've talked about a number of different things this semester, from the concept of decision making, how managers are required to plan, organize, lead, and control things within their realm of decision making. Again, this realm of decision making includes different factors, different variables, and in many cases, different resources are required. With these things being said, I hope you realize as you listen to this professor's comments today that practice makes perfect, right? That growth begins where comfort ends. And some of you students, most of you in this class, are doing very well in terms of your commitment to complete the assignments. I realize that we are in a summer session, and during the summer you may have family and friends that are not doing any type of, let's call it, regulated learning. I mean, we learn every day in our lives. Every decision that we make has a learning or provides us a learning opportunity. And as you're taking this summer course, there may be other items or other variables, factors in your life that might be pulling you away from this committed effort. However, if you stay the course, if you work through the uncomfortableness, and if you just commit to the fact that you say, hey, I'm going to complete this class so that I can have 3 more units, that's towards my degree. Moreover, I have embedded understanding of the principles of management, and as a manager, some of the things I need to consider. I do believe that you'll be successful. And keep in mind, as I mentioned in my syllabus, that this class is not designed to fail you in any stretch of the imagination. Again, I'm going to look at the overall depth and breadth of your work and grade you as such, right? So even though we have a grading schematic that says, 90 to 100 is an A, 80 to 90 is a B, 70 to 80 is a C, the standard metrics that in most cases you are held to account for when you earn a grade. In my mind, as a management practitioner, learning is lifelong, right? Learning doesn't always happen right at the time that the activity is occurring. And so if you are committed to this effort, if you start out how you finished, or should I say finish how you started, please forgive me. And if you started well, where you were reading, studying, applying, and completing the assignments within the 2 learning management systems, you're going to be successful. So today, my announcement, I basically started with hello students. As we continue the summer term, keep in mind the importance that perseverance, commitment, and consistency plays in your success as a student. Students can often get lost in the actualization and application of their learning based upon the desire for immediacy of return on education. Unfortunately, individual learning, growth, and the ability to apply knowledge in many cases have multifaceted trajectories needed for success. So in essence, as you're learning things, if you're a return on investment type of a person, like for me, being an athlete, a large part of my life, let's say being an athlete as a student athlete, in high school and college, I was able to go to practice and see the return in my jump shot, see the return in my ability to play defense, see the return in my ability to understand the game of basketball, just on the outside of academics. And then as a student, invariably, if I spent time reading, studying, and applying, and I didn't understand the process of learning that, as I've coined it, back then, as reading, studying, applying, but it was critical that as a student that I understand that, hey, I need to pass all of my courses to meet a long-term goal. But more importantly, I believe that culturally, we have in our system, at least in most cases, culturally, learning is fundamentally important for us. At minimum, K through 12, right? So moving into the post-secondary education or the college education, you're doing this because this is a choice that you're making. So as I talk about trajectories, some of you will continue and you'll take this course and you'll be successful and you'll take more courses as it applies to your business degree or the various degrees associate's degrees that you're working on. Some of you will take this knowledge that you've learned and you will apply it in the professional spaces that you are going to be involved in. Bottom line, the learning, growth, and the ability to apply knowledge comes at different times. So my goal with this course as your professor is that you're able to see some of the components within a managerial decision, mind frame, or should I say a manager's mind frame, principles of management, to really promote, I shouldn't use the term really, to promote greater awareness and understanding of management theories and philosophies. In chapter 1, we talked about managing and performing and how critical that was in terms of a manager's ability to assess performance, what we might call key performance indicators, KPIs, one of the terms that we use here at Victor Valley College in the higher educational realm. What are our key performance indicators that expresses that we are doing well in terms of retention of students, that we are doing well in terms of the success of students, that we're performing at some base level or above that base level in terms of student completion of degrees, and then that we are performing at some level that is helping students to matriculate into the business world and or transfer to the university. In chapter 2, we talked about external and internal environments. That is, the internal environment is your office, is your space. It could also be your family. It could be cultural norms that you have learned and embedded in your process of life. The external environments would include those things outside, right? Today in the high desert, it's going to be about 102, 103 today. So externally, it probably might be better for you to be inside where it's relatively cooler. But the point being is that managers have to identify these factors. In chapter 3, we talked about the managerial decision-making process. What are some of the intuitive things that are necessary for a manager? And what I mean by intuitive, I mean just inherent thought processes that a manager must look at when making decisions or consider. And then planning and strategic management. So if we have a goal and we've identified that our performance is not where it should be. And let's say we're using a key performance indicator to say that our business is successful. This year we earned $100,000. Last year we earned $200,000. So there's a $100,000 drop off. Why? What happened there? Right? Or we could use a smaller number. Let's say you're a small business owner and last year you made $10,000 in profit. And then this year you only made $2,000 in profit. So as you identify that, you say, well, what are some of the things that I need to plan strategically to ensure that next year the firm makes at least $10,000 to meet our opening year profitability point? So, do we need to hire someone new? Do we need to develop a marketing strategy that gives us the ability to grow our customer base? Do we need to change direction in terms of maybe our management philosophy? Have we been too forceful? We talk about managers in I believe it was the ethics chapter that talked about, you can force when you have a decision, when you're working with others. You can avoid, right? You can collaborate, or you can develop a system in which all of these things, all of these particular items, or shall I say decision-making variables come into play, right? So maybe you've been too forceful. Maybe you've been too draconian with your workers to say, well, you're 15 minutes late, I'm going to dock you 15 minutes of pay. Maybe moving into the next year, you need to be maybe a little bit more flexible to say, all right, well, if you're 15 minutes late, you need to work 15 minutes later. Or I'll adjust your schedule to accommodate the fact that you are going to be late to work. And let's say maybe I'll have you work if it was starting at 8, I'm going to have you start at 8:15. Right? It's just some of the different decisions that a manager or a business owner has to consider. And then ethics. Where does ethics play in terms of the why we do certain things? Right? And whether or not our philosophy, our moral philosophy within the firm is driven by a particular ethical system, that is egoism, that is utilitarianism, to name a few. And then how does this impact our business in terms of sustainability? The going concern, we would say, in accounting, sustaining the business. And then in chapter 6, international management. What are some of the aspects of international considerations that we may need to consider as managers? And this chapter may be more relevant to those of you that work for multinational corporations, in which customers, suppliers, competitors are non-domestic, meaning are outside of the United States. Okay. So just with that general overview of the things that we've covered in terms of chapters, and you'll also recognize too, last week that we did not have a discussion board on ethical systems. Bear with me, I'll show you that more specifically. Give me a moment. I moved that particular discussion into this upcoming week. So let's take a look at the reading list. This one should be updated. Well, it's not. So let's update it real quickly. So this week we're going to actually be doing our ethical discussion board, and that is a discussion board that is Control C. And let's move this down here. Take this one out, put that one in, and put a line through that. Format, font style. equals, where would that be a strike? Okay. I don't think I saved that. Okay. So my point is, I do apologize for doing my editing while I'm doing my professor's comments. So this one has been pushed down, right? And you'll notice too later that I'll show you how this particular ethical systems discussion is related to the student learning outcome number 1. Okay? So not to be too quick on this, but I want to be very specific that what I've done thus far is basically talk to you about the importance of stick-to-itiveness within the course. Also talked about some of the things or the chapters and or management theories that we have discussed this term. And then made one change to the reading list where I rearranged the ethical system discussion board into the 4th week. And I'll make these changes here as well. This will go to 4, this will go to 5, and this will go to 6, right, in terms of discussion boards. So I'll make some changes there for you and myself a little bit later. So if we look at the module for this week, we're going to be discussing international management, right? And as we think of this international management component, let me go ahead and add this file here so that you will have the PowerPoint slide for this chapter. And let's move this up. Oh, actually it was already there. So let's remove that. Okay. So the big component here is, as we look at this first quote from Lester Brown, international management, he says here, it was once said that the sun never set on the British Empire, but today the sun does set on the British Empire. It does set. Now, I see that as saying that there's a reckoning whenever you're dealing with, or a corporation or a firm or a manager is dealing with the international environment, that there are variables that are constantly changing, which requires managers to constantly change in some way, shape, or form. So it goes on to say that today the sun does set on the British Empire, but not on the scores of global empires, including those of IBM, Unilever, Volkswagen, and Hitachi. Because as we know, the British Empire is no longer an empire, right? Over time, things have occurred in the world. Competition, wars, strife. Moreover, individuals' desires to have the ability to work for themselves, right? So things have changed since the British Empire. The corporations, though, on its face, as it says, but not on the scores of global empires, including those of IBM. IBM's still around. There was a time where IBM had digressed significantly from a profit standpoint. Again, the IBM machines that corporations used now became the Samsung machine, became the Apple machine, became the Dell machine, right? So, but IBM still exists today. Unilever, the cosmetic innovation company. Gillette, razors. If you are like myself, I have to shave pretty much every morning. Volkswagen, and the consumer company Hitachi. So in this chapter, and again, as I'll say this as you're listening, so the midterm exam will have about 10 to 12 questions per chapter. So those questions will be not focused on any particular area of the chapter. Typically, you'll have about 4 or 5 true or false questions, and then you'll have a couple of, or should I say 5 or 6 multiple choice questions. And then there's 2 essays that you have to write at the very bottom or at the end of the exam. So as I mentioned in the discussion board today, make sure that you allocate time to take that exam. You don't want to wait until next Tuesday at 9 p.m. to start taking the exam because it's due at 10 p.m. Right? So you want to really, I shouldn't say really, but arrange your studying this week with some urgency. So you want to clean your slate this week. You don't want to do much traveling if you can help it. You don't want to do too much, should I say, extracurricular activities with family. I mean, you're going to have to say to yourself, all right, in order for me to be successful as a student, I need to cut out a couple of the fun things and really focus in on my academics this week, if at all possible. Of course, if you're like me, me and my family have a small vacation that we've set. We're only going down to San Diego for a couple of days. But if as a professor, I have to consider I need to take my computer so that I can stay in touch with my students. So if you are planning on doing a vacation or something of that sort, make sure you take your laptops with you. So in this chapter, what you're going to see, and I won't go through all these bullet points, but primarily discussing what integration of the global economy means for individual companies and their managers. Also describe how the world economy is becoming more integrated than ever before. And then you'll look at specific strategies that organizations use to compete in the global marketplace, to name a few. As we look at the international space, you can see that obviously we know the world is vast, right? But as we look at the top 10 global firms, we can actually identify that these are international firms. These are firms that are selling products not only in a domestic market, but in an international market. In the United States, number 1 global firm is Walmart. Number 6 is ExxonMobil, which I might be challenged to say that ExxonMobil is there now. I believe Amazon might have displaced ExxonMobil. And then Apple. But inherently, when you think about each of those companies, they all do something nationally, or should I say domestically, and then international, in terms of customers, in terms of supply chain, in terms of competing. In Britain, BP, British Petroleum, right? According to the author, the Netherlands, Royal Dutch Shell, Germany, Volkswagen, China, Sinopec Group, China National Petroleum, and State Grid. And again, when you think of China, and maybe the reason that those global firms are the way they've set the way they are, it's because China is huge, right? It's vast. I mean, billions, no, not billions, but yes, billions of people, right? And then Japan is Toyota Motor. So as you think about the international world, it's very important to identify the relevancy of outsourcing. That is, outsourcing is contracting with an outside provider to produce one or more of an organization's goods and services. And we can see this. This is evident today. If we were to call into, let's say you were to call to return something, or let's say a credit card, because the other day I had to activate a credit card that I wanted to use, and I'd gotten a new credit card. And immediately what I noticed is that the linguistic patterns of the associate on the other line, they weren't American. I believe it was in India outsourcing group, because you can tell, like if you're Boston, you'll talk hey like this or whatever, but hey, yes, yo, I do not mimic other dialects at all, well, but So if you've heard of how Bostonians talk, right? But I could tell that the associate was in another country. So why does Capital One do this? Well, because it's cheaper. In India, they have another very large country with millions of people that are willing and able to do work cheaper than Americans might. So outsourcing is important. And then offshoring, moving work to other countries. We see this a lot with some of our major firms within that we've discussed. So the global environment, in essence, is the global economy is more integrated than ever before. We see this obviously with the introduction of Amazon and the vast retail group that they have amassed or developed. The global economy is dominated by countries in 3 regions: North America, Western Europe, and Asia. And then other developing countries and regions represent important areas of economic growth. So I'll leave you with this slide that just basically discusses key issues of the global environment. That is economic environment, technological environment, legal and regulatory, demographic, social, and natural environment. So these are just a couple of things as you begin your studies this week that you will embark upon in terms of reading, studying, and applying. So going back to the modules, I do apologize. I should not use that filler word so. It means nothing. So week 4, I've introduced our study routine, which is obviously something that you have used before. Chapter 6, PowerPoint. Keep in mind that, like in previous chapters, this Chapter 6, International Management, this is a reading item. That's why it has a 0 on it. So you want to go and read the chapter, of course. You need to do that. Then you have Chapter 6, Exercises and Videos. We do not have a quiz for Chapter 6. And then we have a discussion board that's due, all right, by Monday. And then last, the midterm exam. So if we're on the 12th, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So you have 7 days to prepare for your exercise video and your discussion, and 8 days to prepare for your midterm exam. You and I both know that that's not enough time if you don't use your time wisely. And of course, I say that with all due respect. Okay? So let me go ahead and click over into McGraw-Hill Connect really quickly. And so this week, so keep in mind here, I'm not really sure why I have this caution triangle here. I do believe you should not have a problem reading the chapter. If you do, I ask that any of the students out there that might view this video today, email me right away and let me know if you have problems getting into that reading chapter for Chapter 6. Then we have a Learn Smart module, and we have exercise and video assignment. And then last, we have the midterm exam. Okay? So I'll leave you with this. Life is about taking chances, trying new things, having fun, making mistakes, and learning from it. So keep in mind that you're taking a chance here at Victor Valley College. It will pay off. You're trying something new if this is your first summer course. Some of you will say, yes, I'm having a ton of fun when I watch the videos. I'm able to see the applied management theories in the real world as captured on video. And then we may have made some mistakes. We may have forgotten to do an assignment. We may have forgotten to read before we took a quiz. We may have maybe spent more leisure time than we should spend on study time. The key is that you're learning from it. Have a great week. Again, stay encouraged. And remember, perseverance, commitment, and consistency plays a vital role in your success as a student. Have a great week.